The relentless march of time, while bringing wisdom and experience, often carries with it a subtle but profound shift in the body's internal chemistry, a change most keenly felt by the mature male. This is the phenomenon of andropause, an often misunderstood term that describes the gradual, age-related decline in androgen hormones, chief among them testosterone, T. This narrative, crafted for the discerning viewer seeking a science-backed approach to vitality, delves deep into the biological necessity of maintaining optimal testosterone levels well past the fifth decade of life, setting the stage for the powerful, yet natural, intervention offered by specific, targeted physical exercises. We must first establish the critical role of this steroid hormone, extending far beyond the conventional association with muscle mass and libido to truly appreciate the potential of strategic training. Testosterone, a primary sex hormone synthesized predominantly in the testes and to a lesser extent the adrenal glands, is a multifaceted signaling molecule whose influence permeates nearly every system in the male body. Its functions are anabolic, meaning it promotes tissue growth and repair, but they are also deeply integrated into metabolic, cardiovascular, neurological, and skeletal health. Post-adolescence, T levels typically peak in the late 20s, and from that point forward, a slow, often imperceptible decline of approximately 1 to 2% per year begins. While this slow decay may seem innocuous on an annual basis, by the age of 50, the cumulative effect can manifest in a cluster of nonspecific, often debilitating symptoms that significantly compromise quality of life. The clinical definition of late-onset hypogonadism, the medical term for pathologically low T levels in older men, is a critical area of research, distinguishing the physiological drop from a true deficiency requiring medical intervention. However, for the purpose of maximizing health and performance, the goal is not merely to avoid deficiency, but to elevate and sustain T levels within the optimal physiological range, maximizing the body's inherent anabolic drive. The symptoms associated with suboptimal testosterone are varied and can easily be misattributed to simple getting older. They frequently include a persistent reduction in energy and vitality, a noticeable decrease in muscle strength and endurance, an unwelcome increase in visceral adiposity, belly fat, and an often distressing decline in sexual function. Yet, the impact is not merely physical. Testosterone is a powerful neurosteroid, modulating critical cognitive functions. Lower T levels are often correlated with decreased motivation, poorer concentration, and even changes in mood, sometimes mimicking or exacerbating depressive symptoms. Furthermore, the role of T in bone mineral density is undeniable. It acts as a protective agent against age-related bone loss, osteoporosis, a condition often considered primarily a female health issue, but which significantly contributes to fragility fractures in older men. The gradual reduction in this protective anabolic signal shifts the balance towards catabolism, accelerating sarcopenia, age-related muscle wasting, and contributing to frailty syndrome. Understanding this systemic impact is the key to motivating the commitment required to reverse the trend. The mature body is not simply running out of fuel. It is receiving weaker instructions from its primary signaling molecule. Crucially, the decline in total testosterone is often compounded by changes in the way the hormone is transported and utilized. As men age, there is a progressive increase in the concentration of sex hormone-binding globulin, SHBG, a glycoprotein that avidly binds to sex hormones, making them biologically inactive. Testosterone bound to SHBG is essentially sequestered and unavailable to the hormone's target receptors in muscle, bone, and brain tissue. Therefore, the biologically active form, free testosterone, the unbound fraction that can readily enter cells and exert its effects, is disproportionately reduced. This distinction between total T and free T is vital in the context of physical training. An effective natural intervention must not only stimulate the production of new testosterone, but also aim to modulate SHBG levels or enhance the sensitivity of target tissues to the available free fraction. This is where the profound metabolic and endocrine effects of strategic exercise come into play, offering a mechanism that pharmaceutical interventions often overlook. The body, an astonishingly interconnected biological machine, operates under the principle of homeostasis, constantly striving for internal balance. Exercise, particularly high-intensity, compound movement, acts as a potent, though controlled, stressor that temporarily disrupts this balance. This acute physiological shock triggers a cascade of compensatory responses, collectively known as the acute hormonal response to exercise. Unlike the chronic inflammatory stress of modern life, which tends to suppress the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal (HPG) axis, the master regulator of testosterone production, the acute stress of heavy resistance training is eutrophic. It signals a metabolic demand for increased anabolic support. The central nervous system, recognizing the need to repair and adapt to the challenge, sends signals down the HPG axis, specifically stimulating the pituitary gland to release luteinizing hormone, LH, which in turn travels to the testes to prompt the Leydig cells to synthesize and secrete more testosterone. This is the bedrock of natural T-boosting. Furthermore, the type of exercise dictates the magnitude and duration of this beneficial hormonal surge. Low-intensity, steady-state aerobic activities, while excellent for cardiovascular health, typically elicit a negligible or even slightly detrimental acute T response, particularly in older individuals. Conversely, exercises that involve a large muscle mass, utilize heavy resistance, and are performed to a high degree of effort, activities that recruit a maximum number of type 2, fast-twitch muscle fibers, are the most powerful secretagogues for testosterone and other anabolic hormones like growth hormone, GH, and insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1. The magnitude of the response is directly proportional to the volume, total amount of work, and the intensity, load relative to maximum capacity, of the session. For the mature male, this means a paradigm shift away from low-impact maintenance routines towards challenging, progressive resistance training. The body responds not to the comfort of familiarity, but to the demand for adaptation. It is imperative, however, to contextualize this approach within the aging body. While the drive for intensity is essential, the aging musculoskeletal system requires a more calculated and nuanced approach to progressive overload. The gradual increase in stress placed upon the body during training. Tendons, ligaments, and joint cartilage lose elasticity and hydration over time, increasing susceptibility to injury. Therefore, the quality of movement must take precedence over the sheer quantity of weight. The initial phase of any successful T-boosting exercise regimen must involve meticulous attention to biomechanics and an emphasis on functional stability, ensuring that the foundation is sound before the load is significantly increased. For the bodybuilder after 50, the secret is not just what they lift, but how they lift it, focusing on time under tension, control, and maintaining impeccable form throughout the full range of motion. This deliberate approach maximizes muscle fiber recruitment while minimizing the joint stress that sidelines many older athletes. The integration of specific, high-yield exercises into a comprehensive lifestyle strategy represents the most potent non-pharmacological pathway to reversing the age-related decline in vitality. By stimulating the body's natural endocrine machinery, these movements do not simply replace a missing hormone. They recalibrate the entire systemic anabolic drive. This is a crucial distinction. Hormone replacement therapy introduces an exogenous source, which can lead to negative feedback and suppression of the body's own production, a process known as atrophy of the HPG axis. Natural stimulation via exercise, conversely, enhances the system's endogenous capacity, promoting long-term, sustainable hormonal health. The goal of the subsequent sections will be to distill this complex scientific framework into 3 highly effective, evidence-based exercises: the bodybuilder's secret, that leverage the principles of large muscle group recruitment and systemic metabolic demand to achieve the most profound and natural increases in testosterone after the age of 50. The foundation of necessity has been laid. Now, the architecture of action must be detailed. Having established the biological imperative for maintaining robust testosterone levels and a mechanism by which acute, high-intensity resistance training stimulates the endogenous endocrine system, the focus must now shift to the specific protocols that maximize this anabolic response in the mature athlete. The 3 exercises comprising the bodybuilder's secret are not arbitrary choices. They're selected based on their unparalleled capacity to recruit the largest possible percentage of muscle fibers across the major muscle groups, thereby generating a systemic metabolic and mechanical load necessary to signal the HBG axis for increased androgen synthesis. This section meticulously dissects the first 2 of these cornerstone movements, detailing the scientific rationale, biomechanical execution, and necessary modification for safety and efficacy in the demographic over 50. The barbell squat stands as the undisputed king of all resistance exercises, a foundational human movement pattern that, when loaded correctly, provides the most potent anabolic stimulus available through training. Biomechanically, the squat is a highly complex, multi-joint movement involving simultaneous flexion and extension at the hips, knees, and ankles. It recruits the vast majority of the lower body musculature, including the quadriceps, hamstrings, gluteal complex, gluteus maximus, medius, and minimus, and core stabilizers, erector spinae, transversus abdominis. The sheer volume of muscle mass engaged simultaneously is the primary driver of its profound hormonal effect. This massive global muscle activation demands an exceptional expenditure of energy and oxygen, triggering a corresponding acute stress response that directly correlates with the post-exercise surge in testosterone and growth hormone, GH. The more muscle tissue recruited under load, the louder the signals sent to the brain that the body requires enhanced anabolic support for recovery and adaptation. For the mature male, execution must prioritize depth, control, and spinal integrity. A common misconception is that the squat places undue stress on the knees. However, provided the biomechanics are sound, specifically ensuring the knees track in line with the toes and the hip hinge is initiated correctly, the movement strengthens the stabilizing musculature around the knee joint. The crucial modification for the over 50 demographic often revolves around mobility and load management. Many older individuals present with reduced ankle dorsiflexion or tight hip flexors, which can compromise the depth and safety of the deep back squat. In such cases, the use of heel wedges or transitioning initially to a goblet squat, which utilizes a dumbbell held vertically against the chest, can be immensely beneficial. The goblet squat allows the individual to maintain a more upright torso, acting as a counterbalance and facilitating a deeper, safer descent while still heavily loading the quadriceps and glutes. The goal is to progressively load the movement while strictly maintaining the integrity of the lumbar spine, avoiding the dreaded but wink posterior pelvic tilt at the bottom of the movement, which places compressive forces on the lower vertebrae. Furthermore, the squat's efficacy as a T-booster is maximized by adherence to specific training variables. Studies consistently show that the greatest hormonal release occurs with high-volume, moderate-intensity training protocols, typically involving multiple sets, 3 to 5, of 8 to 12 repetitions, performed with a weight that constitutes approximately 70 to 80% of the individual's one repetition maximum, 1 RM. Importantly, the rest period between sets is critical. Short rest intervals, 60 to 90 seconds, maintain a high systemic fatigue state, leading to a greater buildup of metabolic byproducts like lactate. This heightened metabolic stress is a powerful independent stimulator of GH release, which works synergistically with testosterone to promote tissue repair and hypertrophy. The squat is therefore not just a muscle builder. It is an endocrine system stimulant, forcing the body to rapidly adapt to a massive metabolic burden. If the squat is the king of lower body movements, The deadlift is unequivocally the emperor, engaging more overall muscle mass than any other single exercise. The deadlift is a pure test of functional strength, the ability to safely lift a heavy load off the floor, and is perhaps the single most potent exercise for generating an acute, systemic surge of anabolic hormones. The deadlift recruits the entire posterior chain, the hamstrings, gluteus, erector spinae, the deep muscles supporting the spine, trapezius, and lats, along with a significant contribution from the forearms and core stabilizers. It is fundamentally an exercise in isometric holding for the upper body and spinal musculature, coupled with a powerful concentric hip and knee extension. The sheer amount of weight that can be handled during a deadlift generates maximal tension throughout the system, providing the highest possible mechanical stimulus. The biomechanical demands of the conventional deadlift on the lumbar spine necessitate an even greater emphasis on impeccable form, particularly for the mature trainee whose intervertebral discs may possess reduced elasticity. The key to the deadlift is the hip hinge, driving the hips backward while maintaining a perfectly neutral spine from the base of the skull to the tailbone. The spine must function as a rigid, neutral lever. The primary cause of deadlift-related injury is the rounding of the upper or lower back, which shifts the stress from the powerful posterior chain muscles onto the passive spinal structures. Therefore, the implementation of the deadlift for T-boosting must be managed conservatively. A highly effective and safer alternative for many older trainees is the trap bar deadlift, or hex bar deadlift. The trap bar design places the lifter inside the center of gravity of the weight, rather than slightly behind it, allowing for a more upright torso position and a reduced moment arm on the lumbar spine. This modification significantly decreases the risk of hyperextension or flexion, making it an excellent exercise for achieving a high level of lower body and spinal loading with minimized technical risk. Regardless of the variant used, the training prescription remains geared towards maximal anabolic output. Focus on lower repetitions and heavier loads than the squat, typically in the range of 3 to 6 repetitions per set, utilizing a weight that demands maximal voluntary effort, 80 to 90% 1RM. The deadlift-specific hormonal advantage is tied to its recruitment of the spinal erectors and the intense, near-maximal voluntary contraction of the lower body. This level of systemic mechanical tension is interpreted by the body as a survival demand, triggering a maximal protective anabolic response. Furthermore, research has suggested that exercises involving the direct loading of the axial skeleton, the spine, are particularly effective in stimulating bone mineral density improvements, a vital secondary benefit for the older population mitigating the risk of osteoporosis. The deadlift is therefore a dual-action agent, a powerful stimulator of circulating testosterone and a direct promoter of musculoskeletal resilience. The short rest periods, 90 to 120 seconds, are still crucial here, though slightly longer than the squat due to the higher systemic demand of the heavier loads, ensuring the nervous system is adequately rested to maintain form. But the metabolic stress remains high enough to drive the hormonal response. The deliberate, controlled execution of these two movements forms the bedrock of a successful natural T-boosting regimen, creating a profound, systemic stimulus that forces the mature body to revert to an anabolic, growth-oriented state. The third and final secret exercise is the overhead press, OHP, specifically the standing barbell or dumbbell press, which is the optimal choice for the upper body component due to its requirement for total body tension and its superior recruitment of the shoulder girdle and stabilizer muscles. The OHP engages the anterior and medial deltoids, triceps, upper chest, and crucial scapular stabilizers. Crucially, when performed standing, it transforms into a full-body exercise. The legs, glutes, and core musculature must be forcefully engaged in an isometric contraction to maintain rigidity and transmit force through the spine to the shoulders. This requirement for systemic bracing elevates the OHP from a simple shoulder exercise to a potent, multi-joint, anabolic stimulator, complementing the lower body focus of the squat and deadlift. The biomechanical challenge for the mature male during the overhead press often lies in shoulder joint mobility and integrity, frequently compromised by rotator cuff issues or chronic impingement. For individuals with limited shoulder flexion or known cuff pathology, the strict barbell OHP can be overly demanding. A highly effective and often safer modification is the dumbbell overhead press, DOHP. The use of dumbbells allows the lifter to operate in a more natural, neutral, or slightly rotated grip position, semi-supinated or pronated, which often alleviates anterior shoulder discomfort by reducing internal rotation. Furthermore, the DOHP requires each arm to stabilize the load independently, intensifying the demand on the smaller, deep stabilizer muscles of the shoulder, further enhancing joint health and resilience over time. Regardless of the apparatus, the execution demands a vertical bar path, a tight core, and a deliberate press that pushes the head through the arms at the top, achieving maximal scapular elevation. Training variables for the OHP should mirror the principles established for the squat and deadlift. Focus on a high effort level and progressive overload. Due to the smaller muscle groups involved compared to the lower body, the loads will be inherently lighter, but the intensity must remain high. A protocol of 8 to 12 repetitions for 3 to 5 sets, performed with a weight that induces momentary muscular failure within the target rep range, maintains the necessary metabolic and mechanical stress. The rest intervals, 60 to 90 seconds, should be kept short to drive the acute spike in anabolic hormones. The inclusion of the OHP ensures that the training regimen is balanced, addressing the systemic decline in muscle mass, sarcopenia, equally in the upper and lower body, which is essential for maintaining a favorable anabolic/catabolic balance and maximizing the total body hormonal response. The efficacy of the squat, deadlift, and overhead press, when performed correctly and progressively loaded, stems from their shared ability to powerfully engage the three primary anabolic levers: mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and neurological demand. This synthetic approach, the combination of these three movements in a carefully managed progressive program, acts as a non-pharmacological recalibration of the endocrine system, shifting the body from a default catabolic state associated with sedentary aging back towards an anabolic, repair and growth trajectory. The bodybuilder's secret is incomplete without addressing the critical role of lifestyle factors, which act as powerful co-regulators of the testosterone-boosting effects of exercise. The training provides the signal. The lifestyle provides the resources and the recovery environment. Sleep and circadian rhythm. Testosterone production is strongly tied to the circadian rhythm, with the highest concentrations released during the REM sleep cycle. Chronic sleep restriction or poor sleep quality directly suppresses the HPG axis and increases cortisol, the primary catabolic, muscle-wasting, stress hormone. The mature trainee must prioritize 7 to 9 hours of high-quality, uninterrupted sleep to allow the endocrine system to execute its nocturnal anabolic repair cycle. Without adequate sleep, the maximal hormonal output generated by the three exercises is effectively negated. Nutritional support. Macro and micronutrients. The increased demand for tissue repair necessitates an adequate intake of protein, the building block of muscle and many hormones. Aiming for 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is essential for maximizing muscle protein synthesis in older adults. Furthermore, healthy dietary fat intake, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats from sources like avocados, nuts, and olive oil, is crucial, as cholesterol is the precursor molecule for all steroid hormones, including testosterone. Micronutrients like zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D are also non-negotiable cofactors in the synthesis pathway. Chronic deficiencies in these areas can directly limit the body's ability to produce T, regardless of the training stimulus. Stress management. Cortisol control. Chronic psychological and emotional stress elevates cortisol levels. A sustained high cortisol to testosterone ratio is fundamentally catabolic and immunosuppressive, directly counteracting the benefits of anabolic training. Techniques such as mindfulness, brief recovery walks, or dedicated leisure time are not peripheral activities. They are essential components of an anabolic lifestyle, managing the systemic inflammatory load and preserving the HBG axis function. In conclusion, the bodybuilder's secret is not a fleeting trick, but a scientifically validated system rooted in compound movement, metabolic demand, and disciplined recovery. The strategic deployment of the squat, deadlift, and overhead press, executed with technical precision and progressive overload, provides the strongest possible natural stimulus for testosterone and growth hormone production after the age of 50. This endocrine recalibration, supported by meticulous attention to sleep, nutrition, and stress management, offers the mature male a powerful, evidence-based pathway not just to building muscle, but to reclaiming vitality, cognitive function, and long-term musculoskeletal resilience. The time for low-impact complacency is over. The science demands high-impact, strategic effort. The rewards are a sustained anabolic state and an undeniable extension of the body's youthful potential.